This is the Community Advisory Board meeting for the Regional Food System Action Plan for Plymouth County and some abutting communities. Um, we are going to wait a couple of minutes. I don't see Rita on yet, so we'll give her a couple minutes to join us, and I know there's a few other people still filtering through as well. Um, Frank, Brenna, and Jill, you should have received, I think, co-host things just in case.
Yep,
Okay,
and I'm letting people on as they join.
awesome. That sounds good. All right, so while we're waiting a couple minutes, just a quick review of where, oh, here's Rita, so she'll be on a second. Um, all right, so today's focus for the Community Advisory Board meeting is Theme 7. We're going to be talking about place-based economics that enhance local control, local food system resource ownership, and the ability of local people to participate fully in food system work. I feel like that's a lot of jargon. But once we get into the indicators, I think we're going to have some really great discussions today. Um, Rita, I think you're on. Oh, yes, there you are. I see you now. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Yes, great to see everyone. Sorry, we have a Nantucket carrot right before, so we were just wrapping up there with some other food-related questions. So we'll jump right in. For those of you that have been on these calls before, it does usually take us a full hour and a half, and so we'll jump right in. And what I might ask everyone to do, if you can, is if you can change your name so your Zoom name to first and last name, and then the organization you're with, if you haven't done that already. That helps us on the back end see who was here contributing, but also for anyone here in the room, just getting an idea of who's doing what and what organization they're with, or what part of the community are coming from here. So, as Joanne said, 7 really is just about those place-based economics. And the question, we usually do a little bit of an icebreaker. We'll throw it in the chat because we've got quite a few people here. The question this week is really how could local food be a stronger driver of the local economy in Plymouth? So, we're really going to be looking at, what are some of the resources that are here, what's missing, and if you have any or any thoughts or comments on that first question there, any of these questions is, how could food be a stronger driver of Plymouth's local economy? What are some of the biggest barriers? And then we have some other follow-on questions if you have any thoughts. What kinds of jobs or training programs would help people enter the food system? How can investment in local processing and distribution strengthen resilience? And where do you see opportunities for more food dollars in the community? So those are the kind of things we'll be trying to answer once we've got some more of the resources from Theme 7 gathered. So any questions before we jump in? I know there's a couple new faces here, so you're kind of getting thrown into the deep end here. So feel free to throw questions in the chat. We're essentially, for each of the indicators, we're just going to be looking at what resources are available in Plymouth County. And the resources we're focusing on are policies, projects, programs, or organizations. So feel free to use the raise your hand, the Zoom button for raising your hand, jump in, or throw things into the chat. Whatever way you want to participate is works for us. So um, with that, Joanne, would you like to share your screen and we'll jump into taking our notes? Sorry, just getting my notes document there too. Okay, so we're starting here with the marine economy. So we're looking at what resources do we have around place-based marine economy? So in Plymouth County, does anyone know of leadership or any organizations that are collecting and publishing data on the seafood economy and equity? So obviously the economy part is the dollars, what's being landed, and then the equity piece is around who's fishing, who has access to being a part of the fishing and seafood economy in Plymouth? Does anyone know of any projects, organizations?
So Rita, I would say just listen to a great update and recap of shellfishing in the town of Plymouth at their Board of Selectmen meeting about different options that they were doing, and then the size. Um, Rick Veo was talking about the size of the prize for local shellfishermen in Plymouth, distributing across the country.
Excellent. And sorry, who was that, Frank? That was
So that was at the Plymouth Board of Selectmen's meeting a couple weeks ago, and it was Rick Veo, a local developer and shell fisherman.
Can you spell that? Do you know how to spell
Uh,
his last name? Is it Vale or
VA, there's a Y in there, I think.
It's
I'll look it up and put it
VAYO.
in the chat.
Vayo?
Yeah. Um, the there is quite an active shell fishing industry in the Plymouth, Kingston, Duxbury harbor, that embayment. Um, I would suggest for pointers to individuals who are tracking and involved, maybe talk to Alex Mansfield, who's with the Marine Estuaries Program. I can provide additional information about contacting him, but he's based out of the North and South River um,
The
uh,
Watershed Association.
Watershed Association, there with Samantha and others.
Yeah, we've been in touch with that group.
Yeah, because they just held a thing on a meeting uh, a week ago on the harbor estuary, and uh, the other thing that I'm pretty sure is the case is each of the towns has got to provide shellfish licenses, and of course marine fisheries uh, would be something that tracks those and tracks the take from the each one of the bodies.
um yes, great. Yeah, the DMF I think was probably one of the primary more at the state level there that's um doing that work.
Right.
Um Great. And just so that you know as well, we're grabbing comments and adding them into notes, so they will be in there in the final version. Harbor and port investment. So obviously this was for people coastal in our communities investing in small boat landing, storage, and ice infrastructure. Another thing that has come up on the vineyard, especially, is when we're talking about harbor and port investment for smaller fishermen, local fishermen, for fishermen that are maybe keeping more of their fish for local consumption, is also gear storage. So, in anyone who's from a coastal community, is your community actively investing in supporting small boat landings, storage, ice, gear storage? Anyone have any resources there? Cassandra, I see you shaking your head there.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think Cohasset does.
No.
So Plymouth does have a small boat ramp used for commercial fishermen. Aside, they just did a large restoration project. It's a side of East Bay Grill, um, and that's used. There's a small supporting parking lot for commercial fishermen, and the ramp is an old ramp that was fitted.
Great.
Right. And the person to contact in Plymouth for probably more information on that specific question would be Chad Hunter, the harbor master.
Perfect.
Yeah, Chad actually manages the approvals for the shell fishing licenses too.
Yes.
So I'm gonna expose myself here as to not being entirely familiar with Plymouth County coastline, but would the main towns on the coast that would have some fishing be Plymouth, Kingston, and
Yep.
Cohasset?
Duxbury,
Duxbury.
potentially,
Yeah.
Situate, Hingham,
Marshfield.
Marshfield, yep.
Right.
Okay.
So
Hull.
Green Harbor and Marshfield, um, definitely Situate. So Plymouth is the largest fleet area. Situate is a smaller. Wareham has a good size bunch of good size harbors.
Okay, great. And Duxbury. And yeah, Joanne, thank you for taking those notes because I was just thinking about who we might want to reach out to for this question.
And I should go back and specify. So when I was shaking my head no, I was more specifically thinking of like storage and ice infrastructure, but we do have a small boat ramp.
Okay.
I don't even know if it's like a landing area. It's mostly used by kayakers and things like that, but I could see it being used by smaller recreational boats where people are fishing.
Okay. And small commercial. So this again is something that's been particularly important for Barnstable, where a lot of the local fishermen, small boat landings are in and out each day. So it's that kind of ramp access for those really those kind of smaller boats. They might be commercial, but they're getting their boats in and out quite regularly. Um, Okay, let's go to our next SD50 here. So this question is looking at whether or not there's any programs or anyone looking specifically at BIPOC designed seafood processing and marketing infrastructure. And there's a little bit of, from what we've seen so far, and because we introduced these seafood indicators about halfway through our Plymouth Carrot, we possibly just haven't had a chance to answer some of these, but sort of the first layer is are sort of those marginalized small fishers being supported by being a part of designing, processing, marketing, things that they need to work. And then kind of within that are is the BIPOC community, are people who don't typically have access. Their voices often aren't heard. Are they a part of this process at all? Um, so I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on this one. It's very possible there aren't any resources that jump out. Take.
The only thing that jumps out in my mind, and I don't have the answer, it's really just a question, is I know we're planning to interview some folks from the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe. I
Mhm.
don't know how integrated their tribe is into, I know by right they have a right to a lot of stuff that non-tribal members don't, but I don't know how integrated they are into the happenings of kind of like Plymouth's seafood infrastructure stuff. I don't know, Hampton, or I don't know, is Michael still on? Yeah, Michael, if you guys maybe, oh no, I think Michael is gone. But Hampton, I don't know if you know anything more about that.
No, the not really. Uh, it's a little bit out of my range.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good question, Joanne, too, and it's a matter of not just it's really looking too at the funding. Like, are they able to get funding for the projects related to fishing, seafood and fishing infrastructure that they want? Is that
Mhm.
being supported? And then who's supporting it? And again, the carrot is looking at that more local, like if we're looking at local resilience, then is this being supported locally? Um, so I think that would be a really good question to add. Okay, let's
Excuse me,
go. Oh yeah,
excuse me, Rita. This is
yes.
Jill Slankus. I'm not related to the SD50, but the one before it made
Hmm.
me think of something that we had heard in some of our interviews with oyster farms and the issue, I guess, of storage of equipment and wondering about how to navigate the storage of equipment, if not on the coastal property, but like to be able to acquire land upland, inland, for storage. And so that's kind of come up as an issue again with land value, with maybe zoning, with things like that. I didn't know if that item had been, noted or addressed. But we have heard that there is a desire to be able to find some space, be able to own some space for storage of equipment off property for the oyster farms.
I think that's a really, really good point and a great question. And it's definitely one that actually just came up in the Nantucket conversation and came up last week in Martha's Vineyard, where there's various aspects. It seems like there's so many barriers to getting into fishing. And there's again, the access to ice, but that freezer storage and where it's going to be and who owns it, but then the gear storage and access to gear for both shell fishing and regular fishing. So, and I don't know if this is, it is a particular issue for the Cayman Islands because what they find is that there are people who they rent their own home, so they're not able to put some of the infrastructure at their house. And then they have the same problem where there is another land available to do it. So thank you for calling that out. That ability to store your gear is a really big barrier. So it would be great to find out. Is there a shell fishing association that we've talked about before for Plymouth, in Plymouth?
I would check. There's a fella who's been an oysterman for years and years, Bill Doyle. Bill lives down in Center Hill, in that area of town along the coast. He's done cranberry farming and oyster farming, and he would be a great contact. I can send you his contact information if you'd like. The other is Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe. I'd reach out to Melissa Ferretti. She is the chairperson of the tribe. She's also chair of the select board in the town of Bourne.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Sure.
All right. And
Sorry.
yeah, we'll just.
Let me just clarify. Sorry, I realized I was on mute. Did you say Bill Doyle or did I hear a Philip?
No, Bill.
Bill. Okay, I was hearing things.
William
Thank you.
Doyle.
And then just a note too that this is another one to discuss with Melissa Ferretti. Great. All right, we'll let Joanne do the notes here before we move on.
Rita, are
Okay,
you checking? Sorry, I just want to make sure. Are you glancing through the meeting chat stuff?
yes, I am, and
Okay,
I'm
cool.
putting them
I
into
can't really
my
see.
notes
Perfect.
document.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Okay, so next one, we're still thinking about marine economy here. Are there any organizations or programs that are providing seafood industry training, licensing, or safety certification? Could be even ServSafe. This is something that we've heard the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension has quite a few programs, so I don't know if they have a footprint in Plymouth, if some of their resources are being utilized by Plymouth fishers.
To my knowledge, they probably are. I know that the Marine team through Cape Cod Cooperative Extension has a significant relationship with a lot of the aquacultural stuff here.
Okay. So Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, any other organizations that are looking at the training, licensing, and safety certification for fishers or anyone in seafood?
Quick question, Rita. Does commercial recreational fishing, like charters and stuff like that, does that play anywhere into this, or is that more because it's entertainment? Or I know that doesn't work its way into the food area, so
I think
that's our
it's
primary focus, right?
Yeah, I would say if you can think of a resource, I would say go for it, let's put it in. And I think it's because we're also, at some point we're going to be looking at where are some of the opportunities. And I think that there's there's people who are fishing to feed us, and then there's recreational fishing. But those are skills that also translate into I want to go learn to fish to feed myself tomorrow. So who would I go to talk to? And that's where there's a little bit of crossover between currently it might be something that's more for recreational fishing, but that is ultimately still part of kind of secondary to food. So I would say if you've got anything in mind, Frank, let's throw it in there. And I also like I'd really encourage people. We actually just talked about this on Nantucket, where we were talking about access to affordable materials for growing food, and we threw in as a resource access to native and pollinator plants. So that's not food production directly, but it supports food production. So I think we can kind of expand our thinking around this a little bit about really what supports food production. So I would say, Frank, if you've got something, call it out.
Michael,
If
you
you
have
don't
your
have
hand up?
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it, Joanne. But yeah, the Mass Fishing Partnership, they do a lot of safety trainings, um, mental health support. So it's more wraparound type services for the fishing industry. But Judy Keating, Keding, is the contact in Plymouth. They're very active on the Cape and South Coast, New Bedford as well.
Great. Thank you. And I see a few good comments there. Thank you. And yeah, adding those in. Okay. Judy Keating, sorry, Joanne, just in the comments there, it's Keding.
Not to be confused with Bill Keating, TIG.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay. Any low interest loans, grants for small scale fishing boats and gear? Anyone know of any program that is providing financial supports for small scale fishing boats and gear? Because that can be one of the biggest barriers. Nope, no takers. Um, I don't is you said the mass fishing part. I don't know if there's anyone that we might be able to reach out to about this that anyone can think of. Nope. All right. We'll move on. So now we're starting to look at leadership, food system, and root causes. So in Plymouth County, and you can read leadership as it can be government leadership, it can be organizational, it can be sort of people, really advocates within the community. So think of leadership on all parts of the spectrum. Are local leadership acknowledging the challenges facing the food system, specific to land, infrastructure, education, climate change, immigration, economic development, healthcare, and racism? So is that something that is being explicitly elevated and talked about from any leadership organizations or people in Plymouth County?
So in terms of land and infrastructure, I would say the Plymouth County Farm Bureau is very active in advocating for legislation through the State Farm Bureau that affects, the zoning laws and regulations that assist and sometimes are an obstacle to farmers. So I think they're very active in that. Um, that I know that they just had their legislative breakfast a few weeks ago, and I know there's legislation around immigration that they're very concerned about. Of course, I don't. It's state legislation, not federal, so I don't know off the top of my head. But they certainly would be a good resource to talk about these issues.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else think of any organizations that are really advocating and elevating the issues facing the food system?
I think the challenge that we have is the federal administration's current, posturing, if you will, make it very difficult for people to step forward. And I think in general, it's always difficult to get people who've been formerly recipients and been into the system who you really want to have step up and be involved. to advocate, to take on leadership roles, you generally don't see it. Whether you're talking homelessness, whether you're talking substance addiction, it normally has its challenges. People not wanting to step forward and being identified as being in need of those services in the past, and would it affect their current employment or other factors. I think it's very difficult, to be honest with you. It's very challenging, because you don't often see people from diverse backgrounds, people who have been former recipients in leadership roles.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's where these sort of structural barriers to participation become
Yeah.
a big issue.
One thought, and this is just me reaching beyond Plymouth County, but someone who might be willing to speak would be the soon to retire Catherine D'Amato at Greater Boston Food Bank.
Mm.
Catherine has been in the mix of trying to get food diapro let me look up to see if I've got hers in the thing. But Catherine has been in the mix of trying to get food to those who are food insecure for decades, and has been truly a powerhouse both locally and nationally.
Hmm. Great, thank you. I'm
I'd
going to throw
add,
up. Oh,
oh,
yeah, go ahead.
I'd add, Rita, that specifically on the land side of things, I think there's probably been a lot of acknowledgement at the state level, both through the state itself as well as through land trusts and other environmental organizations,
Mhm.
on that side of things, at least. On the flip side, when it comes to things like secondary water sources, to build resilience during times of drought, I don't think there's really much attention at all been paid to that side of things.
Interesting. I think those are really good points. Yeah. Joanne, yeah, it's perfect if you can add those in. Yeah, those are both really, really good points. I would also just put a shout out for both Old Colony Planning Council. These are things that they're obviously, aspects of this they're obviously addressing and elevating as important. And then I would also say Plymouth County, Frank. I don't know exactly how it's happened, but I think it's been very unique and amazing to see the leadership that Plymouth County has taken in regards to land, food production, programming, economic development, and the need for infrastructure and economic development. So I don't want to miss those just because you're in the room and might not self-advocate here, but
Thanks, Rita.
sure.
Along those lines, it seems to me that the new head of the South Shore Community Action Council that oversees a warehouse food program, Nikki Gilbois, would be a good contact locally. They oversee and connect with a lot of the pantries in the area, and I would think that they probably also have a network of former recipients of service who might also be helpful in advocating for needed policy changes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Nikki's been participating off and on from almost the beginning of this project. Actually, even I
Right.
think before we were formally off the ground with it. So she's
Mhm.
great.
And now
Yeah.
that she's the new executive director, I know she just has a lot more on her plate. So
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
do know Alyssa is interviewing her in the coming weeks, so we did manage to snag her for some more thinking time.
That's great. Excellent. I didn't realize she was the new executive director. That's fantastic. Okay, we'll move to 86, social determinants of help. Or health, sorry. So this is a question around, is local leadership collecting data on the social determinants of health in our community? Um, and are they sort of using those for, understanding the food system? So who in Plymouth County is gathering those social determinants of health and then using them to inform programming, but food program especially?
The
Yes,
hos the oh God, sorry.
Yep, go ahead, Michael. Oh, sorry, did I?
No.
I would always defer to Dennis. Go ahead, Dennis.
No, Michael, I was going to talk about the fact that we have the hospitals obviously are doing a lot in the way of assessments in the community, and particularly, and Michael's the co-chair of the Community Health Network that talks about the social determinants of all of the areas, and often we talk about housing, mental health, behavioral health, and whatnot. But I would say the hospital systems are responsible for doing needs assessments rather than having them be done by or repeated by other folks. But I think those groups, the not only the hospital but the community health networks that were set up years ago by the Department of Public Health are good avenues for the ones that are still operating, like the one in Plymouth, Greater Plymouth area. But Michael can speak more to that than I can.
No, yeah, that's essentially what I was going to talk about. Not only BID, but South Shore Health, which is sort of the northern end of uh, Plymouth County, also has that requirement to do a comprehensive health needs assessment. And I would also say Plymouth, Town of Plymouth Health and Human Services unit department, which is fairly new, last 3 or 4 years. They are also, yeah, Frank just put it in the chat, but they're also doing a townwide health assessment. So, and they will focus on the social determinants of health in doing that.
So can I ask, so the CHNA, Community Health Needs Assessment, that's been mentioned a couple times. Is that a state-funded assessment that hospitals are doing?
So
Yeah, good, Mike.
they're
I'm sorry.
they're required to do it as part of their license. I believe it's through the Attorney General's office, actually.
Okay.
And I think
And
it's only
that might
nonprofit hospitals, right?
nonprofit hospital,
Yeah.
exactly.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's
So
part of their nonprofit status, Dennis, if I'm not mistaken.
that's right. And in the greater Brockton area, it's Signature Healthcare, BID in Plymouth, as Michael suggests, and South Shore Hospital are the three that I think are mostly in this area in the geography you're talking about.
And um, so for the town of Plymouth to be doing their own, then will that be sort of complementary to one that's been done by a hospital? Or Frank, maybe how does that work? Or is it because you don't have a nonprofit hospital in the area doing one?
No, I
So,
think it's a separate process. It is complementary. I believe it's part of their public health accreditation process, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's
So
every 3 years, I think.
yeah, to be accredited as a nationally accredited public health department. I know City of New Bedford goes through it every 3 years, and I believe that's why HHS in Plymouth is doing it as well.
Gotcha. And is that a size thing, as in if you're over a certain population? Or so if New Bedford's doing it and Plymouth's doing it, I'm just trying to understand. I'm trying to understand where the leadership is coming from on that.
so
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dennis.
I was just going to say, I think it's housed within a community benefits part of the hospital. So in the case of Plymouth, it's Karen Peterson. In the case of Brockton, it's Beth McNeil. I think temporarily she's the director of philanthropy, but they had a transition. It was Hillary Laval, and I don't know who it is for South Shore. Maybe Michael does, but
Yeah,
typically those are the key people you want to talk to.
Who was it
Okay.
at South Shore or Signature? So it's Karen Peterson.
Signature, it's Beth McNeil. And like I said, she's filling in. She's not the person who was in it was Hillary Laval for a number of years, but she recently left the hospital.
And South Shore, it's Liz Cullen. South Shore Health is Liz Cullen. I just put it in the chat,
Oh,
Joanne.
great. Thanks.
When I spoke
but
to, go ahead,
go
Michael,
ahead,
I'm
Frank.
sorry. No, please, you.
I was just going to say, I think the leadership, it's not the size of the community or the municipality. I think it really is driven by the people who are working in the health departments within those communities. I think any public health department in the state can go for accreditation. Obviously, a smaller department is going to, maybe not have the bandwidth to do that or see the value in doing that because it's a pretty rigorous process. But New Bedford has a pretty extensive, good sized health department. Plymouth HHS is really just Michelle and Emily, but they have a lot of workers underneath them in the different divisions. So.
Mhm.
So for example, the largest community in our project area is Brockton, and they are not accredited and they do not do a Brockton-wide community health assessment.
Yeah, I think the other part about it is those communities that understand where they can get support from federal or state grants. So without the data, they are not as in strong a position. Plymouth leadership, the selectmen, Derek, Michelle, they just do such a great job at understanding how they can receive money to help fund what they're after. And it just leads to a great return on investment.
Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts on social determinants of health that's a pretty good, I understand it a little bit better. Oh, just one last question. These are all publicly available. They're put out there and then they're publicly available assessments.
Yes, and I believe Alyssa is taking a look at them, and I know we've talked to Jill about making sure that they're included in our plan because
Okay.
they do ask about food in them. Food insecurity stuff is definitely in there.
Yeah. No, and it would be interesting to know what towns have them or sort of again that spread. It's interesting that Brockton doesn't necessarily have a CHNA.
Well,
Sorry,
well,
SHNA.
Well, they
I don't know
wouldn't
that
for
it
the
doesn't.
city.
It's
Oh.
through the hospital. It's
Right.
through Signature Healthcare. It's not the city. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's through the hospital.
So
Okay.
Plymouth is unique in our area because they will have one led by the municipality and one led by the hospital in the area. But Brockton's would just be covered by the hospitals.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
All right.
Not
I
to,
may need
not
someone
to,
from, oh yeah.
not to cloud the picture anymore, but I believe the community health centers are also have some sort of requirements to do some health needs assessments as well. So Harbor Health in Plymouth, the Greater Brockton in Brockton, and I know Manet has some presence throughout Plymouth County as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Community health centers seem to be becoming sort of increasingly important in that, particularly when it comes to food as medicine and access to food and nutritious food. I do just want to throw out Dee Dee's comment here around one thing that would be helpful is to have people can do it in a couple different languages. Are these community health needs assessments in different languages? Translated portions of them?
So yeah, usually, yeah. So I know, for example, I've been using the Beth Israel one for a different project recently, and that definitely is offered. They actually even had a focus group, I believe, with a translator as well for a specific community. I'm not sure which.
I think that's worth noting too. Because again, what this is really going to get, you'll see with some of our following indicators, some of these are more relevant kind of town to town, so we won't be able to answer them for everyone. But again, it's looking at accessibility of these key pieces that are contributing to place-based economy. So towns where they're being translated, and if that's actually a policy that even if it's sort of an internal policy or any kind of policy for them to be translated, I think that's valuable to know. Okay, so we will move to now. This is really again looking at accessibility and prioritizing lived experience. So this is going to be a little bit more town specific. So again, we may only be able to tap into everyone's personal experience from their town, and we'll follow up otherwise. But we're going to look at, first of all, public meeting accessibility. Are public meetings easily accessible by the general public? And that will include things like translation, video access, transportation. Are your public meetings in your towns easily accessible? If you know about a town that you feel does it really well, that would be great to hear about.
So all of our municipalities will are required to hold accessible public meetings to the extent that that means that they have to be in an ADA accessible location. They don't have to hold them virtually, so there doesn't have to be public recording available after or a virtual option to attend. Most of the communities do offer that now, but it's not a requirement. And they all offer ADA accessibility things that you can request for public meetings, like, you know, if you need a hearing device or translation, you're supposed to, they offer it, but you have to request it. Usually, I think it's like 48 hours in advance, and then they're required to provide it. So it's not like on the spot available. Town meetings are a little bit different. So town meetings, generally speaking, you can't participate hybrid because of the nature of a town meeting. So there's some questions about accessibility there. But similarly, they're always, you know, well advertised. There are rules around that and everything else. Sometimes some of our communities for particular projects will offer childcare or transportation assistance. That's probably not typical, as far as I'm aware, for just your standard like select board, planning board, those kinds of meetings. But if you're doing like a specific project, like an open space plan or something like that, oftentimes those sorts of things will be built in. Things generally aren't regularly translated, with the exception of sometimes maybe in the city of Brockton. But that's not a consistent thing either.
So there is a new law that's going to come into effect April 26th of this year. It's a Department of Justice Civil Rights law that will be focused on any communities larger than 50,000 this year. And then next year will be all the rest of the communities, the following in 27. And it all speaks to digital accessibility. So it will include everything from translating all websites and tools to closed captioning all videos for any meetings, and then even digital standards on types of fonts and colors that are usable on websites, along with having descriptive verbiage for any pictures. So that's a major law. It's costing communities quite a bit of money, but it follows that with people, especially post-COVID, using websites as more for civil engagement and interaction. That like the 70s when they added ramps, now they're doing that for all their digital assets.
Okay. So just to clarify, Joanne, the accessibility things that you were talking about, and then Frank, that law, those are obviously state requirements or state laws.
Federal and state for the digital web accessibility.
Okay.
So it's Department of Justice federal, and then the Attorney General, it's a state law also.
Okay. Cassandra, I grabbed your comments there about Cohasset. Does anyone else have any thoughts on public meetings in their own towns and accessibility? Or again, anyone that stands out as doing it really well?
Joanne's description fit pretty well for Halifax, other than I'm pretty sure there isn't daycare available, and I'm not 100% sure about translation. We don't boast a very diverse community, but I think in general it has to be accessible and is. You could argue the buildings are old and in need of probably renovation, but in general they meet the requirements of accessibility.
I'd maybe just add, and this isn't strictly accessibility, but I think oftentimes what we find is just getting people to know that a meeting is happening is often the problem. So just the lack of information being a barrier really is oftentimes bigger than the actual accessibility stuff.
I was thinking that as well, just like when you want to find out about a meeting, it can be tricky to kind of track it down depending on a town's websites. So then just kind of without thinking about the specifics of what's required, just anyone's sort of gut response on, are public meetings in your town easily accessible, whatever way that means to you? Or thinking about it through someone else's, someone who maybe hasn't participated much. They want to be involved, they want to find out about things. Is that easy to do?
I would say that in Plymouth, it's relatively easy to do. The website, town clerk requires that all public meetings be posted at least 48 hours with an agenda, and they prior to the meeting commencing, and many of the meetings that I believe is actually state law. And there is, for the record, there is open meeting training this tomorrow evening from 6 to 9. But it is the case that to my knowledge, and I attend many meetings, the majority of them, particularly for the larger committees, conservation, planning, zoning board of appeals, not all the time, but on some instances, and select board, et cetera, are all hybrid meetings. Some of the smaller committee meetings are in person or simply entirely hybrid. For example, Agricultural Commission has been recently entirely hybrid. Open space is combined, and my Land Use and Acquisition Committee, we typically meet infrequently, only when particulars are in front of us, is in person at Town Hall. So it varies widely.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any thoughts on accessibility? All right, we'll go to our 88. So this is looking at food system expertise in government. Do planning departments or any other councils in government have staff, or departments in government have staff with expertise in food systems, farmland, gardening, or agriculture?
Well, we know that the county does. We have one here.
Yeah.
Plymouth has an agricultural commission, and if anyone is interested in joining, there is one vacancy on the committee, and they are engaged in any number of activities to promote agriculture in the town of Plymouth. And I would have to say that their focus is on small plot and residential based or very small plot agriculture, with an exception or two on the committee.
Great, thank you. Michael.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to follow up on that, most towns do have agricultural commission or board or an official town department or board devoted to agriculture. I mentioned the Plymouth County Farm Bureau, and one of the action items was for local farmers to join those farm commissions, so that people who are directly affected by farm policy can have a say in the town developing the policy. So just wanted to mention that.
Yep. No, that's great.
It'll depend. So every municipality will have a conservation agent and or a conservation department. Some of those conservation agents have more background in some of these issues than others. So I would say that's probably municipality specific.
Yeah.
And then also, of course, OCPC is a quasi-governmental, right? So with state funding. And then we also had the sheriff of Plymouth County has an agricultural team and experts on staff.
Molly, did you want to add anything? Do we?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty good. I was just gonna say, Michael, said the Farm Bureau, they're looking for a call to reinvigorate some of the ag commissions. Some of the town ag commissions have gone stagnant, or they have closed them in the past few years because of a lack of interest, but there's the big push to get those going.
Mhm. And also,
Yeah.
I was just going to throw in too, it's not just ag commissions, but some of our communities have like herring commissions and stuff too. So
Mhm.
other.
Other, again, sort of tangential.
Mm.
And yeah, just pushing a little bit on the staff. Oh, Cassandra, because Hassett does you. Yeah. Great. But on that staff piece too, the agricultural commissions, I would even wonder about conservation commissions, I think because agriculture gets some exemptions. So, and there's often that sort of tension between conservation organizations and food. But I mean, this is pretty good, to be honest. I think Plymouth does really stand out here with having the county level staff around food systems, farmland, etc. But any other staff, so people who are like paid, embedded within the structure of the towns, the government to be addressing food systems, farmland. So as opposed to commissions, which would be more volunteer and maybe a little prone to, again, dissolving, maybe not being listened to, if that's what some agricultural commissions would say. I mean, this is I think one of Plymouth's strengths here, so there may not be anything else, but okay, let's move to the next one.
Rita, I was going
Oh,
to say,
yeah.
how about boards of health?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. I feel like boards of health have some of this expertise on them?
And if you're talking about value added things like community kitchens, things like that, boards of health regulate that.
You're
So,
right. Yeah. So I think that's a good call. That's the question would be, is that experience, are people with that kind of experience on boards of health? Is it intentional? Are we recognizing that boards of health need to have that? Because my
yeah.
experience, actually, that's a great point, Bill, is that it's really not there's not a lot of food experience on the boards of health that I've seen or been on.
And even the duties of an agricultural commission, you're supposed to act as an intermediary between farmers with issues and boards of health when they go to enforce regulations. And you also bring in the animal control officer when you do that too. So,
Yep, that's actually, yeah, that's animal control officer might be another area where there might be some experience there, more so around, I don't know, livestock or things. All right. So we are going to whether or not any comprehensive plans include input from food system leaders, farmers, gardeners, local food markets. So I kind of feel like, Joanne, this is a little bit of a shoo-in. The plan that we're working on, you're obviously getting a lot of input from different organizations. So if you
Yeah.
agree
So
with that.
ours is so I guess it depends on how you define a comprehensive plan. So typically each municipality will have their own comprehensive plan, sometimes called a master plan. There are state law requirements for what has to be in that. So there has to be like a housing chapter, has to be a transportation chapter, there has to be an open space and recreation chapter. But then communities throw in other chapters too sometimes. I would say that a traditional comprehensive plan probably doesn't really have much about the food system apart from some discussion around the open space aspects. So it'll list all of the chapter lands, for example, in the community in an open space plan. But it won't, and there might, if it is a strongly agricultural community, then in their economic development chapter, they might have some aspects of that built in there as well too. But I would say generally speaking, I think in traditional planning documents, And Cassandra, and if there's anybody else on that's a planner, can weigh in here too. I think they're probably pretty weak on considering food systems more broadly and holistically.
Would there be any towns that jump out at you that you feel like might, and we don't necessarily need to, we can think about it afterwards, but it would be interesting to see towns that do have a strong agricultural presence or identity, or have they included anything about food in those comprehensive plans? Um, and I think it's also because what we're seeing as well is that some plans, so then broadening this idea of comprehensive plans. So I know that there's sort of a specific use that's used in planning, but then even just more broadly, are there plans that are being developed that are including input from food system leaders? What we're seeing happen in some other towns is there are various plans going on where people will say food can go from A to B, and but they're not actually talking to the farmers, and they're not. So they're including food system commentary in plans without actually talking to food system stakeholders. So I would just put it out there more broadly, organizations that are doing the work to get sort of on the ground lived experience input from people in the food system that are going into plans, whether it's an emergency plan, comprehensive master plan. So that's where I sort of think of what this project is, a local food action plan. So inherently, it's getting input from food system. Anyone out there really working on getting those voices included in planning in any way, shape, or form?
I'm wondering, Jill or Brenna, if you guys have found anything?
Thank you. I was just about to chime in. Joanne did a nice job of explaining the parts required of a plan, and then sometimes communities will do, sort of an extra specific one sort of chapter or cross-cutting theme that we're seeing more regularly. Communities include is sustainability, and what that means. Each community may have sort of their different important feature of sustainability, whether it's energy. But I think this brings to mind that maybe something that we include in this food plan is a recommendation for municipalities to incorporate folks in this area into their next comprehensive or master plan, to bring to light, to your point, whether it's the emergency services chapter or the sustainability chapter, cross-cutting transportation. It would I think fit very well into that. But to my experience, the farmland conservation groups may be included, but in terms of some of those other entities listed, not as much. We may hear from community centers or council on aging, and kind of get at the food access to some degree. But if nothing else, this is, I think, a great way to elevate the importance of bringing those voices to the tables in municipal planning.
I think another cross-current or cross-cutting sector is housing, because we're hearing that a lot of barriers to farming, to having people who can work in the food system, having people producing food, fishing, investing in land, investing in infrastructure and property that you might need on your property, is having housing, and then the affordability of housing. So I think that a major barrier to more local food is housing, at least in other places. So.
Yes, that's a great point, Rita.
All right. So if anyone happens to be reading through any comprehensive master plans and sees anything mentioned about food, please let us know.
Barrett, Jill, did you guys do that? Did you scan all the comprehensive plans?
Yes, I think we have.
Yeah, I thought you
was just
did.
gonna
Yeah.
say,
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so we have that. Okay.
Yeah. And we've also scanned all the hazard mitigation plans and the original municipal vulnerability preparedness plans. So
Yes.
Alyssa has info on that. And I think there was like maybe 2 or 3 communities that mentioned food in those, but not to any great extent.
Okay. Excellent. We can stop wondering now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So next question. Is there a local community economic development corporation economic development agency that partners with food system organizations to identify opportunities that to support the food system businesses, supply chains, and infrastructure.
Definitely the Plymouth Foundation. I believe that's what they call themselves now. I think they recently, I don't, the, yeah, they're an economic development foundation, and they do a lot specifically focused on the blue economy side of things with the food system.
Yeah.
There's also chambers of commerce in our region, some big ones. There's 3 biggies, I believe, 4 biggies in our project area: Metro South, South Shore, Cranberry, and the Plymouth area chamber. They're not a state agency, they're, nonprofits or however they're structured, but they do a lot, particularly on the restaurant side of things. Most of them will have like big restaurant weeks, and we'll do some, campaigns and try and drum up business for them and stuff like that. So
Yep, that's a great point.
The Cranberry Chamber of Commerce, which is Lakeville, Middleborough, Carver, they I believe they have more like some of the bog owners and farmers are part of that chamber.
Does Leaf have a footprint in Plymouth County? Has anyone heard of Leaf Local Enterprise? Okay, because I know that they touch on Bristol and the Cape and Islands, but I don't know exactly what they do. Okay, let's move to the next set. So the next 3 are really going to be looking at zoning. And now these are going to be a little bit more town specific. So again, just either you might know these or your own experience. And we're looking about now, and we'll look for the opposite. So local ordinances that support or explicitly prohibit backyard poultry, farm stands, or household composting. Does anyone have any experience in their own town with any of these, or know of any other towns or any zoning specific to food production?
I know in the city of Brockton, they have something in zoning about poultry, and I know that they ban roosters.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was gonna get some chickens in Carver, I had contacted the Board of Health and they did not have any ordinances, so you could just do it.
Okay.
Mhm.
And they didn't, so because sometimes what you hear is if you have over maybe 6, were there
Yeah.
any?
No,
So
not at the
nothing at all.
time. And it may
Okay.
have just been, I said I was only getting a few, but they did
Yeah.
not have any ordinances. I think it
Okay.
was just a general contact the Board of Health and they'll let you know if they can do it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
What is kind of related, a lot of communities have noise ordinances, and oftentimes, like I know in my community in Easton, sometimes animal related complaints will try and get pushed in relation to the noise ordinance. Chickens are too
Interesting.
loud or whatever, so I think those come into play.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, in Plymouth, Plymouth is a right to farm community, and it has the Ag Commission, as I indicated, was very much focused on small plot and farming and poultry, et cetera. And so the individuals, there is, for example, in Plymouth, a requirement that you have a particular acreage. I believe it's 5 acres or more zoning for the maintenance of large animals, particularly horses and cows, et cetera. And that has caused some consternation. In fact, I believe that the prior chair of the Ag Commission did not meet that requirement and was unable to get any kind of movement toward a waiver. And so she packed up and moved out of town. So it is, I think that there was a comment made earlier about the Ag Commission playing an important role as an intermediary between citizens who are trying to do farming and being responsible and at the same time running afoul of neighbors who are would probably, I'll just be blunt, would probably be more comfortable in the town of Newton than in the town of Plymouth. Just because of the rural nature of the town, there are folks who come here and find it difficult to have to find themselves on a property where their next door neighbors have a chicken coop and even a rooster. So there was a period where Plymouth prohibited roosters. I believe that they're allowed nowadays.
Yeah, we have regulations in Kingston too. It allows backyard poultry. There's space requirements. I think it's 3 cubic feet per bird. We allow roosters, but they have to be kept in a darkened area from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., which makes sense. And all of it's done under the right to farm, but there are specific regulations in Kingston.
Interesting. And that's a question, the connection between right to farm and the ability to keep roosters. And I don't know, Molly, if this is something you might know, but is that acreage requirement, is that typical, or does anyone know if is that unique to Plymouth, or no?
Yeah, there's usually some sort of a requirement. It depends on if you're a right to farm community or, if you're like, animal control officer, board of health deals with it. There is if anyone's keeping horses, other livestock, there's usually a process. I think like the town of Hingham, I don't think you're allowed to raise pigs because, smell, manure, that kind of thing. I don't know all the specific details, but there are a lot of like basic practices to follow.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Rhonda and Jill. Oh, sorry, Bill.
I was going to say, Molly hit it right on the head. There's nuisance regulations under the Board of Health regulations that are usually incorporated into the Ag Commission regulations in the town too. And you have to comply usually with USDA standards for large farm animals and smaller farm animals. Like, there's horses, cows, whatever. And then it goes all the way down to chickens and whatever else. But pigs are always tough. You always have to find, you follow manure regulations as far as storage and the whole bit. So,
Jill, I'm wondering, how much did you guys dive into municipal zoning in the study around food stuff?
I think we have. I think that's under our scope of work.
Super. So hopefully we'll have a lot more about this too, Rita,
Yes.
as the plan develops.
Yeah. And I just noted, because Cassandra threw in the link to the Plymouth the livestock compact. So thank you for that. How about farm stands? Anyone hear of any kind of regulation around farm stands, whether you can have them or not? Nope. Oh, Molly?
Yeah, but again, I think it's a town to town issue and I don't know all the specifics.
Okay. And how about household composting? Has anyone heard of any regulations for specifically allowing household composting or not allowing? Or heard of any issues?
I know that there have been a couple of communities, and I can't remember right now which one, where they had somebody who wanted to start like a commercial composting site and it wasn't allowed for whatever reason. So I know there's been some efforts to introduce commercial composting sites that have been kind of shot down.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
I've
and
never
it'd be
heard anything on the
interesting.
household side of things.
Yeah. And I feel like the commercial, it'd be interesting to know what part of it was zoning, but I know then there's like EPA regulations and issues and then nuisance as well. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to see. Okay, we've got a little more zoning, so this is again looking at zoning or any local ordinances supporting or explicitly prohibiting vegetable gardens in lieu of lawns. Has anyone heard anything?
I've never heard anything at the municipal level, but I do know, I think there are some HOAs that prohibit in the front lawn, especially,
Yeah,
but that's not, you know.
yeah, I've heard of that. I don't know any of the examples yet, but I have heard of that being an issue. And I do like to throw out, there's an example, a cool example out in LA of someone who's doing the exact opposite, where he is a commercial grower using people's lawns in the neighborhood to grow and gets you as part of it, you get food that he's grown and then he sells the rest. So
That's amazing. I want to sign up
yeah,
for that.
yeah, right, exactly. Um, anyone else any experience with that? Any opposition to vegetable gardening that open
Uh,
it up even a bit more?
I'll state definitively that there are neighborhoods in the Pine Hills, which has got something like 38 HOAs in the town of Plymouth, um, that prohibit gardening, uh, with the exception of flowers and but vegetable gardening in particular.
Okay.
Um, and
Wow.
and I'll state that some of those neighborhoods also prohibit things that you might consider normal, like wind chimes.
Hmm. All right. I guess you have to make sure you're reading all the fine print. How about community gardens? You know,
There
oh yeah.
there are any number of community gardens in Plymouth, particularly I'm more aware of them in South Plymouth. Um, For example, there is a large and very successful one in Manomet, where St. Bonaventure Church has provided land that is has been used for a community garden for many years, and it is consistently oversubscribed. So, yeah, there is a lot of interest and some, for example, Wildlands Trust on its property has a community garden. The I'm just need to scratch my head for a moment and come up with another three or four. An interesting contact in that regard would be the folks just send an email to sustainableplymouth@gmail.com, and they would be able to give you a whole list of community gardens.
Great. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Um, um, and this is another one that we're hearing that most community gardens that we've heard of in Southeastern Mass, a lot of them are oversubscribed. So there's a lot of interest in growing food and not necessarily the space to do it.
I'll just
Um,
add, oh, sorry, I'll just add to this one that I know the city of Brockton, it's not a local ordinance, but there is sort of an informal policy where they don't allow community gardens. So there have been efforts to, for example, use some park space for establishment of community gardens, and it wasn't allowed. They didn't want to do it.
Okay, that's really interesting. And good to note. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, our next one is around community-led land banks that give residents a formal voice. So there would be the one that I know of the best, the structure is the one on Nantucket, and you've got some elected positions, and there's and they're able to buy property for open space, recreation, or agriculture. So are there similar community-led land banks in Plymouth?
There is legislation pending before the general court at the present time for a Plymouth land bank. It is moving as many things do rather slowly, but it passed town meeting on a 50-50 vote with the moderator casting the deciding vote in favor of progressing it on to the legislature where it will need to pass, and then it will return to the town for a town-wide vote. But it is intended to provide land for affordable housing, agriculture, and open space.
Okay. And funded by property transfers?
Yes, it would be funded. The CPA is funded by a recurring tax on property, just a small add-on to your property tax. This would be funded by a transfer tax upon the sale of a residence. An assessment would be made based on the value of the residence, and that would be used to fund the land bank. And it would be independent as the legislation is structured currently. It would be independent of town government with a board of 9 members. I don't recall, I think it's 3 appointed by select board, 3 appointed by the planning board, and which are both elected bodies, one by the committee I chair, the land use and acquisition, one by open space, and I don't recall who the third, probably affordable housing.
Okay. Great, thank you. And
Sure.
just the note that for Nantucket, where I was living before, is the land bank has been incredibly impactful on local food and agriculture. And they have 2 community gardens, they have an incubator farm, they own the property, and then they have leased out to 3 new farmers in the last year. So it can be a really powerful tool for creating more agriculture. Any others? No? Okay, let's move to our next set of questions. So these questions are looking at workforce development in the food system. So are there any public agencies or nonprofit organizations investing in workforce training specifically to the food system?
Our office offers a summer program for teens called Careers in Agriculture.
And what was that again? Sorry.
Plymouth County Extension does a Careers in Agriculture program for teenagers.
Cool. Careers in Agriculture.
Yep.
And it's do you just sort of advertise at the high schools, and how do you get the kids into that?
Yep, through our social media outlets. We do job fairs at some of the local high schools.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Anyone else? Any other workforce training, professional development programs for the local food system? would Bristol Aggie, or is there an agricultural school in Plymouth County, or was there?
There's not one in Plymouth County. Bristol County does extend, that's basically what they're doing for all the kids
Yeah.
that go to school there. There
Yeah.
are some Plymouth County residents that attend, of course. And then some of the like South Shore VOTEC, Bristol Plymouth VOTEC, Silver Lake has a horticulture program, so kids in those tracks are getting that education.
Okay, so the Votex
Yep.
have some agriculture there.
Right, and the Plymouth, the town of Plymouth high schools have got a culinary program. My granddaughter participates in one of those at Plymouth South. And I know that by my best count, there are something on the order of between a dozen and 24 students from Plymouth who are going to Bristol.
Okay. And then Dee Dee commented that there's the 4-H Club Plymouth Sheriff's Department does a summer program as well.
So the 4-H club, that's what I'm talking about. We do a careers in agriculture program. Some of them are 4-H kids. We do
Okay.
work over at the Plymouth County Extension
Gotcha.
piece of
Okay.
the farm that's on the adjacent to with Sheriff's Department farm.
Okay, gotcha. So those are speaking to the
Same
same
thing.
same
Yep.
program. Okay, great. Any others before we move to the next one? Workforce training, professional development in food.
So
I
the
think
only other
Massasoit, oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think Massasoit Community College has a culinary program. I'm not sure if any of the other community colleges might.
I was going to say the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department does have a hydroponics certificate program that inmates can do.
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking about that too, Molly. Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, great. All right, so kind of using that as a segue into 98. This is looking at further education. So opportunities for professional education credits or certificates aligned with the local food system. And this really calls out available through online or in-person programs.
UMass has a ton of programming.
UMass Dartmouth, or probably both, or
I think
was thinking
several of them.
Amherst.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
which.
Okay,
Maybe the
great.
Amherst one, but I know there's lots of online programs you can do from them.
Okay, beautiful. Any others that come to mind? Opportunities for further education in the food system. That isn't necessarily like a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree. No. Okay. All right. We're moving into infrastructure investment, packing and processing. So financial support or resource commitments devoted to developing local food packing and processing infrastructure. Are there any organizations that are specifically looking at investing in packing and processing? No. All right. If you hear of anything, you can send us an email. Same for distribution. This one might be even tougher and more silence. Anyone investing in distribution and infrastructure for local food?
Again, staying within Plymouth County, correct?
Yes. The distribution one is an interesting one because right now, when it comes to local food, the distributors that are most impactful that we hear about the most are Myers and Farm Fresh Rhode Island, and Coastal Food Shed, who are all, well, especially Farm Fresh Rhode Island Myers are outside of our project area and Coastal
Yeah.
Food Shed's Bristol. So if you feel like they have a significant impact on local food in Plymouth County, then, they're a part of the food system, so throw them in.
Yeah, the only other one I can think of is Hope in Maine, but they're out in
Mm.
Rhode Island too.
Oh yeah, the packing and processing. Yep. Yep. Um,
What about the, if we're talking about financial support, what about the infrastructure grant that's opened up right now and
mhm.
they definitely concentrate on those areas?
Yep. That's a great point. That is definitely state support. So that's the FSIG grant, Joanne, the Food Security
Yeah.
Infrastructure Grant.
Yeah. Jill, Brenna, were you guys able to get numbers for how much of those monies have been spent in our project area? I don't know if Jill or Brenna is still on. Oh, there's
Yep.
Jill.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi.
Yes, we have.
Right.
Awesome.
I feel like there was majority of the FSIG and maybe one of the one that starts with an R. And then I'm not sure about the others, but we have that in the spreadsheet.
Great.
Okay.
Actually, it might be in a table in the existing conditions report, Joanne.
Awesome. Which I clearly haven't finished reading.
We believe in you.
I will.
But,
Oh, the one. Oh,
is there a place, I was wondering, maybe we can put an appendix in, and it may not be fully comprehensive because there's always things that are changing and moving, but I'm wondering if there's a place that currently people can go to find out the funding sources or grant programs. And I know every year, right, some probably come on board and maybe some go off, but I didn't know I know MDAR has, so many. Maybe they're
Yeah.
the sort of place to go to for folks looking.
CMAP? I don't know if
Or
they have a
CMAP.
web page maybe on
They
CMAP.
may. So we can look into that, but it's kind of nice, to be able to
have
list
that
somewhere.
resource. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only other distribution one that I can think of is it's not really obviously commercial, but I know that Spoonfuls and their food recovery program is trying to invest in, more distribution infrastructure to
Yeah,
be able to
that's
serve our region better. So
yep, that's a great point. And on that sort of awareness of grants, we've heard that there's an organization on the Vineyard that is specifically sending notices out to farmers about grants that are available. I can't remember, Molly, is that something that you do for farmers?
It's probably their Martha's Vineyard Ag Society.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. CMAP's really good about that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are both great points. All right, and our last question here. As we're going, are there financial support or resource commitments devoted specifically to developing BIPOC designed and led food system infrastructure? I think Melissa Ferretti is probably going to be a good contact for this one as well.
Mm.
And I also just want to point out too that I think sometimes what gets missed is urban farming. So this might be an opportunity to look at some of the people that we maybe don't have on the call, that might be in some areas where there's urban farming, might be some more resources around this potentially.
I don't think we have any urban farming in our project area. I don't know, Jill or Brenna, if you guys have come across any, apart from Gary's Farm in Brockton, but they're kind of different. Yeah.
Any other examples currently?
Is urban farming, is it not relevant to your project area?
What about
I
the
think-
freight farming?
Oh, that's a good point. We do have some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Brockton.
All right.
And I'll simply throw this out for consideration. I think if we're talking about farming in the broadest of senses, I believe that the town of Plymouth, unless someone can correct me, and Bill may be able to, that the there is, I believe, the last remaining commercial trout farm, trout hatchery, in Plymouth, and it has been in operation since the 1860s continuously. So this is something that has been around for a very, very long time.
Interesting. All right, and two, just throwing out that, urban farming, it doesn't need to be big cities. It is just that like high density residential scale, and just thinking about if it's not there, is there a need and a desire for it? Are there zoning regulations? Is it too prohibitive? Why is there not more sort of super small scale farming? So, all right, with that, thank you, everyone. We're not done with our carrot, but we got through all the themes. So thank you all so, so much. I know we had quite a few people drop off, and it's an extended thank you to everyone who's participated in these meetings. The next two meetings we'll be working towards scoring in the sense of assigning. So we've now pulled all the resources in for each indicator, and we'll be putting them together and looking at assigning whether we feel these indicators are being addressed. Are they being discussed? Are they being funded? Are they in place? And that's going to start to give us this overview of strengths and weaknesses. Where are the opportunities? Where's the focus? Where could the focus be? So you will be hearing from us over the next month, because what we're doing is we are pulling all of these notes into our findings documents, is then going through and determining which of these do we know are true, they're confirmed because people were in the room with us and said, yes, Plymouth County Extension does this, versus a question around, I think South Shore VOTEC does this. So we might be asking people on the Community Advisory Board to look at findings and confirm, maybe do some follow-up emails or conversations, and then we'll also be reaching out to organizations like South Shore VOTEC who weren't on any of these calls. So you'll be hearing more from us. That's the short story. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you in a month.
Thanks, everyone. Rita, do you have 5 minutes?
I do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.